Good morning, dear student. I welcome you all to St. Mary English High School. Subject General Science, Standard 6th. Chapter number 5, Substances in the Surroundings, Their States and Properties, Part 2. In our previous video, we had studied about state of matter, change of state of matter, the difference between state of matter, temperature and thermometer, boiling, condensation, freezing, melting, and sublimation. Today we are going to learn about properties of substances and properties of metals. Now, can you tell how will you identify the following? A glass. It is made up of plastic, steel, or glass. A rod. It is made up of iron or aluminum. A door. It is made up of wooden or glass. A white powder, salt or sugar powder. So, student, how can we identify them? We can identify them with their properties, that is, their transparency, hardness, weight, color, the sound produced from it, solubility in water, etc. Substance can be identified by studying their properties. They can be put to use according to their properties. Let us study the properties of substances in a great detail. Physical properties. Beside density, boiling point, freezing point, melting point, condensation, taste, color, are there any other example of physical properties? Yes. They are malleability, ductility, conductivity, hardness, elasticity, and solubility, which we are going to study in detail. Brittleness. What will happen if pressure is applied on a substances like chalk, brick, alum, glass, or a Rajgiri vadi? These substances break into a small pieces or particles. Such substances are said to be a brittle. This property of the substances is called as a brittleness. Means the substance, when pressure is applied on them, break into a small pieces or a particles. Such substances are said to be a brittle. And this property of the substances is called as a brittleness. Example: chalk, brick, alum, and glass. Hardness. Take an iron nail, try to pierce a cardboard sheet, wet mud and a pieces of wood using the nail. What happens? The nail easily pierces wet mud, but not the piece of wood. It can pierce the cardboard sheet without some efforts. Why does this happen? Because the hardness of a substance is determined by how much resistance it offers to the substances being pushed through it. So, this is the property of substances. The hardness of a substance is determined by how much resistance is offered to the substance being pushed through it. Example: nails, diamond, etc. Elasticity. Now, student, you can see, if we stretch a rubber band and let it go or apply a pressure on a piece of sponge and release it, what do you see? The rubber band and the sponge go back to their original shape. Some substances change their shape, force is applied on them, but return to their original shape and size. When the force is removed, this property is called as elasticity. Means some substances changes their shape when force is applied on them, but return it back to the original shape and size when the force is removed. This property is called as elasticity. Example is rubber. Fluidity. Now, by taking a flat metal sheet of the size of a notebook, holding it at an angle, put a drop of water honey and gum at different places on a board. Observe how they flow down the slope. Liquids flow downward on a sloping surface. This property is called fluidity. The fluidity of any liquid is determined by how easily its flow. Means the liquid flow downward on a sloping surface. This property is called as fluidity. Example: water, honey, milk, etc. Densities. Two blocks of a same size, one wooden, other of iron, are weighed in a balance. How will they compare? The mass of a different substance having the same volume can be different. This difference is because of the difference in their densities between substances of the same volume. The ones with a greater density are heavier than those of the lesser density. The property of density is because of the mass of the substances. A substance with a greater mass has a greater density. Solubility. Take a glass of water, add some salt, fine sand and sugar to it and try to dissolve them. Repeat this, replacing water with kerosene. What do you observe? Some solid substances dissolve in a particular liquid only. If a solid does not dissolve in a liquid, it is said to be insoluble in that liquid. Example: salt is soluble in water but insoluble in kerosene. You know of many beverages made by using water and soluble substances. The property of substance of getting dissolved is called its solubility. Means the property of the substance of getting dissolved is called as solubility. Example: salt, sugar, etc. Soluble means that dissolve easily in water. Insoluble, that does not dissolve in water. Transparency. When we can look through a substance and see things on the other side, then that substance is said to be a transparent. This property of the substance is called transparency. Glass, some type of plastic, clean water and air are the transparent substances. Metal. Substances like copper, gold, iron, aluminum are called metals. Metals are found in the form of minerals deep inside the earth. Minerals from the earth crust are proceed to obtain the metal. In day-to-day life, metal have very important uses. Let us study some common properties of metals. Properties of metal. Malleability. Take a piece of copper or aluminium wire or a small nail. Hammer it repeatedly. What do you observe? On hammering repeatedly, the wire becomes flat. That is, it forms a thin sheet. Metals can be converted into sheet by hammering. This property of metal is called malleability. Ductility. Hot iron is hammered and made into thin sheet. So, iron bars made to revolve continuously while being hammered become longer. The iron can be drawn into a wire. You can observe this in a blacksmith shop. How the hammering causes it to stretch. Metal can be stretched and drawn into the wires. This property of metal is called ductility. Metals like silver, gold, copper, platinum can be drawn into fine wires. Electrical conductivity. Electricity flows through metals. All metals are conductors of electricity to a greater or a lesser extent. This property is called electrical conductivity. Thermal conductivity. Even when a piece of a metal is heated at one place, the whole of it becomes hot. It shows that metals allow heat to flow through them. This property is called thermal conductivity. Sonority of metal. The property of metal producing ringing sound is known as sonority. The ability of metal to produce a particular sound when it is tapped on a hard surface is said to be a sonority. Metal produces a ringing sound. Characteristic colors and luster. Metal have a typical shine or luster. Every metal has a characteristic color by which it can be identified. Example: gold, copper, iron, steel, bronze, silver, etc. What we have learned: solid, liquid and gaseous are the three states of substances. The temperature of a substance can be measured with the help of a thermometer. Heat is the cause of the change of state of substances. Substances have various properties like hardness, elasticity, brittleness, fluidity, density, solubility and transparency. Metals form a separate group of substances. Metals have some common properties like malleability, ductility, thermal conductivity, electrical conductivity, sonority, luster and characteristic color. So, this way we have completed our chapter number 5, that is substances in the surrounding, their states and properties.